Morning, Naomi here for another video. I thought we'd look at possibly several topics today, but the main topic is going to be of the rock that begat us, and that word there is birth, okay? And how God says to us, if you're going to make an argument to me in the court of law, in the courts of heaven, then you better make one that you are able to defend. You better put forth a position to me that logically you are able to defend. So what does God say about you defending a position that's indefensible, really? And God does speak on this topic. And so we're going to talk about how they tell us, men and women tell us over and over us, again, those of us who just are simple-minded and just don't understand things on a bigger scale. We just don't understand, that there's no female God. There's none. There's just no female God in the heavens. There's no female angels in the heavens. I mean, look, they say, oh, the angels are sexless, but then they named them Michael and Gabriel. Sexless, really? And they tell us that because Adam is the image of God, and because we come from him, then we're in the image of Adam, who is in the image of God. And I know this to be true because I've read it in the notes. I've read it in many of the biblical notes that states it that way. All right? So you can't tell me I don't understand. I've done my homework, and I've done it pretty deeply. So let's see, how good can we actually defend our position of saying there's no female God, and what God might actually offer up for you as intelligent advice on this determination. So you know what? It's very simple. You're going to find it in the New Testament, and they have hammered this verse. They beat up on this verse, and they tell you, well, you can't use that verse, and you can't use this verse. And really? Of course I can. That's what it's there for. It's advice from my mother, actually. And you're going to find it in Romans 1:20 is where you're going to find it. Oh no, we're going to hit at this verse again. Yes, we are. Because this is where she gives you your advice. That you better be able to defend your position. That's what she says. She says, you better darn well be able to defend this position to me after what I've done. All right? So what does it say? Let's read it in Romans 1:20. It says, for the invisible things of, well, him. It's always a him, because there's no she, they tell us. We'll say, for the invisible things of God, from the creation of the world, are clearly seen. Let's use your eyeballs. Let's go back to that verse in Job 40, the very last verse. It says, when the behemoth is on guard, actually that's Israel. That's the remnant of Israel, the daughters of Zion. When they're on duty, it says, you're not going to get them not to see. Their eyes are going to be opened, all right? So it says, for the invisible things of God from the creation of the world are clearly seen. You're not blind, are you? Being understood by the things that are made by us, by men and women. Even the eternal power and Godhead, so that you are without excuse. Oh, gee. So, what's the word excuse means? And you could say, I'm ignoring the next verse. I've covered them verses all through my videos, telling you how this works. All right? Because it was shown to us in the very beginning. Now, what does that word you are without excuse means? It has the idea, according to God's own words, you are without excuse. And the number there is Greek number 379. Your position, and this is my take on what you're telling me. Your position that you're telling me, you men out there who wants to tell so many of us women that we just lack understanding, that clearly we're misunderstanding, and there is no female God. It's he. Okay. God says your position that the God that births is not female. It is without ground of defense. It's an indefensible position, meaning one you can't defend based on God's very own creation unless you're prepared to call God a liar and man's made up theology truth. Your position, according to God, is inexcusable. You are without excuse. To preach a he, and that this covenant is going to be between another male and another male. That's it. That's it. That's your defense. This is your theology. Now you defend it. She's going to put you in the position to defend how a male God birthed creation, and the word is birthed. You are without rationale or convincing argument, she says. Refers to what is utterly inadmissible. You're not going to point at her and say she's inadmissible in the courts of heaven. God created us. Sorry, I'm yelling. Impossible to accept her. It's impossible to use her. Without solid logic, it says. Then refers to something that completely lacks merit. 379 again comes from alpha privative. It means to defend, excuse. It occurs in documents from the 2nd century before Christ. Frequently, it's described that hopelessness of trying to defend a case in court while lacking adequate, I can't even talk, defense. And what does it say? What does it say? If you're trying to defend this position as a man and as a woman of God, guess what it says? It says, remember, judgment begins at the house of the Lord. And you are going to be found without excuse to defend man-made theology versus God's truth. That is, that we're to bear witness to. It actually, this creation is bearing witness to the man-made theology as a lie. And you're trying to defend it using man-made lies. And yeah, the truth's in there. Mother says, I've been forced to mingle my words because the Holy Spirit's here, and he's here, and he wrote what he wanted, and he twisted you all around. That's what it says, more or less. Versus God's truth that is carrying witness in God's creation that you can see with your very own eyes. You can't see the Godhead in this creation? Because according to this verse, you can see the very Godhead in this creation. I mean, I've always wondered about that third male in the Godhead. And I may sound, I think the word is facetious. I always wondered, is it a grampy? Is it an uncle? Is it another daddy? Is it another son? I mean, come on. 3 of them. You know, 1's not enough. 2's not enough. They had to put 3 males in the Godhead to really screw you up really majorly. That's what they did. And you fell for it. I mean, if you look at MK Ultra programming, it's a process. And this whole world and the way that we fell was a process. It was. So, can you defend your position of the Godhead being he? And for those who thinks that I'm off my rocker to say that the 144,000 are all female, I'd say you're off your rocker to believe otherwise. There's those out there who says, oh, they're twin flames. There's a good reason why that theology isn't adding up. Men wants it to, right? It's always about them being the image of God. It's always about male being the image of God. Female can't factor in anywhere unless it's in a polygamous scheme of things, such as the marriage, you know. That in itself is a sin. This whole one man is your bridegroom, and everybody else, male and female, is the bride. Sorry, that's a picture of sin itself, folks. It's time you woke up. Zechariah. What does it say in the book of Zechariah? That nobody wants to believe that these are women because it says men. so it must be men, right? Of course, everything's men in the Bible. Everything, except the really, really bad things. They belong to us. But what does it say? It speaks of Joshua, number one, who is Christ. Plain and simple, it's Christ. They've written outlines of these chapters and so many books saying, no, this isn't Joshua. Of course it's Joshua. Of course it's Jesus. Of course it is. It's his clean clothes for the high priest. Well, it's not clothes. It's body. We know our garment is represented to as your body, represents your body. So let's begin in Zechariah 3 and let's see just what it says. And why you're wrong to say that the 144,000 is half male, half female. 72,000 males, 72 females. They're not. They're all females without exception. And he showed me Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing where? At his right hand to resist him. This is the horror spirit called Satan. It's another male. Yeah. Because the right hand is male. Did you know that? And the Lord said unto Satan, the Lord rebuke thee, O Satan, even the Lord that hath chosen Jerusalem. That's your mother from above, which was represented by Eve, represented by Sarah, and a whole bunch of other righteous women. That's right, righteous women. They exist. The Lord rebuke thee, O Satan. The Lord that has chosen Jerusalem rebuke thee. Is not this a brand plucked out of the fire? Who was plucked out of the fire? Well, they're saying Jerusalem, but it's in reference to Christ. Christ not only is referred to as a brand plucked from the fire, but we're referred to in this way in Jude 1. We're referred to as brands that's been plucked from the fire. Verse 3. Now Joshua was clothed with filthy garments. What does that mean? That means the fallen body. And stood before the angel. Verse 4. And the angel answered and spake unto those that stood before him, saying, Take away the filthy garment from Joshua, and unto him, Behold, I have caused thine iniquities to pass from thee. So why are we talking about clean and dirty clothes and iniquity all in the same breath? Well, obviously we're talking about the body as the garment. I have caused thine iniquity to pass from thee, and I will clothe thee with change of raiment. That's a new body. This is Christ receiving his new body. That's what this is a picture of. Verse 5, And I said, Let them set a fair mitre, a crown, upon his head. So they set a fair mitre upon his head, and clothed him with garments, and the angel of the Lord stood by. Now, watch this. And the angel of the Lord protested. Yeah, am I reading that right? Unto Joshua, saying, now watch this. Verse 7. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, If thou wilt walk in my ways, and if thou wilt keep my charge, then thou shalt also judge my house, and shalt also keep my courts, and I will give thee places to walk among these that stand by. Who's the these that stand by? This is this divine selection. They are divinely picked in Romans 11. Right? And they are the daughters of Zion. They stand on Mount Zion, from whence the law issues from. They're also known as the key of David. All right? And they are a divine selection. In Romans 11 it says, If the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? And it's talking about the daughters of Zion that was rejected in the very beginning, and in the end will be received. There's one that comes forth. Watch what it says. Verse 8. Hear now, O Joshua the high priest, thou and thy fellows. That means companions, virgins. And I'll have you believe it's a reference to males. Virgin is never used to represent men except one time in the New Testament. Every other time our pattern is female. Every other time. So, think I ain't got no argument here? Think I got no case here yet? Hear now, O Joshua, the high priest, thou and thy fellows, thy companions, thy virgins, thy female companions, that sit before thee. So they're sitting face to face, which means they're equals. For they are, and they have men, so men obviously believe it's men and women believe it's women because men wrote it in there. No, these are women. You see, they couldn't risk putting a gender like woman in there because then you'd figure it all out. They can't have that. No, 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 no. For they are women wondered at. For behold, I will bring forth my servant, the branch. What's the branch? His daughter Zion. And it is a daughter. And she sits, we're getting off topic, but let's go to Psalms 110. Her number is 136. And she sits beside Christ. Watch what it says in Psalms 110. This is a pivotal chapter. Because Christ's number is 113 here. And that's the number of a servant, a male servant, 113. The daughter's number is 136. And they always walked on Mount Zion. These were always your rightful rulers that were rejected by man in the very beginning. Represented by Eve. And we discussed all these in prior videos, so it's very difficult for me to try to piece it all together in a matter of minutes. 110, it says, the Lord. Now the Lord number there is mother. It's mother's number, 3068 is her number. The Lord said unto my Lord, that's Christ. His number is 113. Sit thou at my right hand. And yes, he sits to the right of mother. But continue to read. She says, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. Because he chose to receive the righteous spirit, and he stood for truth to the point of sacrificing himself for that truth, to restore daughter Zion back to her rightful place, which is in the midst of the body as the rightful ruler. She says, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. Verse 2, the Lord, that's mother speaking, she says, I'm going to send the rod of your strength out of Zion. Rule thou in the midst of thine, to rule in the midst of thine enemies. Now she's coming out of Zion. The branch, Zion, is derived from branch. Sion, S-C-I-O-N, Sion, S-I-O-N, and Zion, Z-I-O-N. And its daughter Zion, that's shown to be the right hand. We discussed that in a prior video, so I'm not going to go over that. Verse 3, thy people shall be willing in the day of thy power, in the beauties of holiness. From the womb of the morning thou hast the dew of thy youth, the doctrine. From his womb he understood what the key was. He'd been taught it. It was in the womb, from the time he was in the womb. And this is a picture of Christ and his locks being full of the dew. It says in Song of Songs, which is a reference to your doctrine, the truth. Verse 4, the Lord had sworn and will not repent, thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. This is the highest order any man can hold. He's a kingly priest, and there's not another one that holds that position. He is the one and only. Verse 5, the Lord, here we go, the Lord who came out of Zion as that branch that we just saw pictured in Zechariah, came out of Zion. The Lord here is 136. The Lord at thy right hand shall strike through kings in the day of her wrath, not his wrath. She shall judge among the heathen. She shall fill the places with the dead bodies. She shall wound the heads over many countries. And she shall drink of the brook in the way. Therefore shall she lift up the head. This is the behemoth right there. That links us right to the verse in Job 40, the last verse, I think. She trusts she can drink up the river Jordan. It's a picture of the entity of Israel, the power of Israel, which was these daughters of Zion when they're in their rightful place of ruling. But it's the daughter Zion that's identified as the right hand, and like I said, we discussed that. And in Zechariah, if you're going to go with this notion that the branch is a male, Christ is the body, he was just given a new body, and then he's told to sit equal to this group, the select group. It's a divine selection, and we're told it's a divine selection in Romans 11, and you're going to try to argue that half of them are male and half of those are female, then you're saying the chance that Christ's spirit could be a male is 50-50. That's what you're saying. And that's the abomination of desolation, by the way. When the Antichrist, who is going to be a male, sets himself up in the body, the temple, and says, I'm God. That's an abomination according to God. And you're saying, oh, the body is male. It couldn't possibly have been a female hang on the cross and die. And you're right, it couldn't have been. It had to be a male. But at the same turn, you're saying the spirit can be represented by a male. That this covenant, because that's what's in view here, is the covenant between a male, which represents the temple, the body, and the spirit, the female, the bride, the branch. She's one. We're looking at 1 and 1. Because Mother says there, she says, from thence will come my branch. From this group, this select group, this divinely selected group, we're told in Romans, your spirit will come from. Your one true bride will come from. And you think that half of this group, because this is the first fruits here in view, in Zechariah 3, this is your first fruits in view, 144,000, third divine selection from Romans 11. Were known before the foundations of the world, from thence will come my servant, the branch. For behold, the stone that I have laid before Joshua, upon one stone shall be 7 eyes, that's the sevenfold spirit. Behold, I will engrave the gravings. I will choose, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of that land in one day. Well, we're going to get into a little bit more discussion of the body as the land in one day. And you're going to say, well, you can't do that. Yeah, I can prove it. Because of what I'm saying here, you're going to say that. Verse 10, in that day saith the Lord of hosts, shall ye call every man his neighbor under the vine and under the fig tree. Now, okay. So that's the reason why I say you can't prove that. And I did get off track. But it says of the rock that begat us. And we're going to go to, and that word is birth, of course. And you're arguing that it's a man. And I've gotten caught up in the term birth. Well, gee, maybe it's because I'm female. Maybe they're telling me because a female God don't exist in the heavens. And a male did all the birthing and creating in story. You can't defend that position. Verse 1, give ear, O ye heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. Verse 2, my doctrine, my truth, shall drop as the rain. My speech shall distill as the dew, as the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass. That's your doctrine. Because I will publish the name of the Lord. Ascribe ye greatness unto our God. It says he is the rock. No, he's not the rock. Watch what it says in Jeremiah 2:27. It says, saying to the wood or tree, thou art my father. They hate to use the word mother here. And to a stone, thou hast brought me forth. Thou hast begotten me. To a stone. See, they would never, they'll put a father here, but they make sure they leave the term mother right out of it. Thou hast brought me forth. To a stone. A tree, you're my father. And to a stone, you're not my mother, but you birthed me. Now defend your position. Come on. Defend your position that this isn't a female God. Defend it. For they have turned their back unto me, and not their face. But in the time of their trouble, they will say, arise and save us. All right. So get your he to save you. Yep. And what does it continue on here? It says, he is the rock. No, she is the rock. They removed she out of there and placed he, and it is slanted. So it means imposed. It's italicized. It means it's imposed on the text. They put it in there. It doesn't really belong there. And according to this, a tree, this is idol worship in view in Jeremiah 2. You bow to a tree and you say, you're our father. And you say to the rock, you birthed me. But it's not a woman. Nope. Shh. Our big secret. And we'll even convince the women. And they did. Sometimes the women are the strongest opponents against there being a female god. I mean, I think if you put them in front of a mirror, handed an eraser to them, they'd willingly erase themselves from creation. They would. They'd do it. For the man. For that Satan. For that horror spirit's theology that they're holding in their mouth as guile. Verse 4, she is the rock. Her work is perfect, for all her ways are judgment, a God of truth, and without iniquity, just and right. They have corrupted themselves. Their spot is not the spot of her children. They are a perverse and crooked generation. Where do we find that being referenced in the Bible? Guess where we find it? Did I go by it? We find it in Malachi 2. I've talked about this from day one. Malachi 2:2. It tells you all about their skirts, how they hide violence in their skirts. Well, skirts there doesn't mean a woman's skirt. Sorry, folks. Better get your context correct. It's talking about the high priest's skirt. They hide violence under the law is what it says. Now watch what it says. It says, Judah had dealt treacherously. That means unfaithfully. And an abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem, for Judah hath profaned the holiness of the Lord, which she loved, and had married the daughter of a strange god. They have corrupted themselves. Their spot is not the spot of my children. They are a perverse and crooked generation. It says, the Lord will cut off the man that doeth this, the master, the scholar, out of the tabernacle of Jacob, and him that offereth an offering unto the Lord of hosts. And this have ye done again, covering the altar of the Lord with tears, with weeping, with crying out, insomuch that she regardeth not the offering any more, or receiveth it with goodwill at your hands. She's saying, oh, you play a real good liar. You play it well, but you don't fool me. Verse 14, yet ye say, wherefore? Well, why aren't you hearing us, Lord? We're being truthful here in how we feel. And she's saying, no you ain't. And watch what she says. Yet ye say, wherefore? Why won't you hear us? Because the Lord has been a witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, against whom you dealt treacherously with, unfaithfully with, yet is she thy companion, and the wife of thy covenant. She's telling you right here what went on. And did not I make one? Yet he had the residue of the spirit of her. And why did I make one? That I might seek a godly seed. Therefore take heed to your spirit, to your wife, to your righteous wife, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth, which is what Adam did. For the Lord the God of Israel saith that she hateth putting away. For one covereth violence with his garment, saith the Lord of hosts. Therefore take heed to your spirit, to your wife, that ye deal not treacherously. It's telling you what went on. And we're in denial about that? I'm just looking to see if it does actually say skirt here. You hide violence in your skirt. The Lord says this over and over again. And it's talking about the high priest's skirt is what it's talking about. Let's go back to Jeremiah 2. because you're going to find that word skirt in there. Actually, I have it pulled up. We're going to go back to Deuteronomy in a minute, because it speaks of the rock. Nope, let's pull it up here. It's right here. So Jeremiah 2, it says, moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, go and cry in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, thus saith the Lord, I remember thee, the kindness of the youth, the love of thine espousals, when thou wentest after me in the wilderness, in a land that was not sown. Israel was holiness unto the Lord, and the first fruits of her increase. All that devour her shall offend, even shall come upon them, saith the Lord. Hear ye the word of the Lord, O house of Jacob, that's really Israel, and all the families of the house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, what iniquity have your fathers found in me, that they have gone far from me, and have walked after vanity, and are become vain. Are we getting the picture yet, what the men did here to her daughters? She says, you left me. You went after something that was worthless. And let me see here. What does it say here? It says, the priest said not, where's the Lord? And they that handle the law. You know, when you go in and you pick that, you look that word handle up, it means captured the law. They actually got a hold of the law so that they could write it whatever way they want it. That's what it actually says. What did I do with my book here? Let me see. Sorry about this. I didn't want this to be this long, but it's going to be. Yeah, it's verse 34 that I'm actually looking at. But it says here, the priest said not, where is the Lord? All right? And another translation, it says, the experts in the law no longer knew me, and the rulers rebelled against me. The prophets prophesied by Baal and followed useless idols. Now, if you go look the word Baal up with a capital B in your Wikipedia, it's going to say that it originally started just to mean Lord, right? That's what that really meant, which is exactly what we discover in the book of Esther. It's the word 1167, and the king decrees a law that says all women must bow to their husbands as lords and masters. All right? And that word there for your husband is Baal, B-A-A-L. And that number is 1167. And so that's the beginning of the Baal worship of a man as a god, your husband as the image of God. All right? That's what we're discovering, okay? And how they really began to remove the image of mother completely out of the Godhead, and the daughter completely out of the Godhead. All right? But what does it say in... now I forget the verse on 34. We're looking at skirts here. It says skirt in, it's not 24, although it speaks of Israel in that context as a donkey in heat. Really? You see, whenever they speak of sex in a sexual manner, it's always on the woman. But if you go in and you look the words harlots and all that up, it's usually in general application to both men and women. All right? So they tend to want to lay it squarely in the female's lap, you know, which is a lie. But it does so say skirt here somewhere, and I've lost it. I thought it was verse 34. But they'll use, no, I'm in 24. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm half asleep this morning. 34. Also in thy skirts is found the blood of the souls of the poor innocent. I have not found it by secret search, but upon all these. So the word here, skirts, you know, for those who think it's talking about women, and you know, simplicity of thought for new beginners would think, well, is it talking about women? No, it's talking about high priest skirts. Is what it's talking about, the priest skirts. Had they dressed? So that's what they're talking about. It says through law, when they got a hold of the law, when these men got a hold of the law, who their fathers had taught them Baal, the image of Baal, the image of a man, the image of he was starting to take hold. They had gotten a hold of the law, and they were using the law to create violence in the skirt. That's what it says. So it means that they were making laws that came against people that they wanted to take out of play. And if you go study those laws, 9 times out of 10, you're going to find it's against women. So they were definitely attacking these righteous daughter, representing the righteous spirit, all right? Which is what births you, all right? So we're going to get back to that. Now, back to Deuteronomy 32. Sorry, I'm all over the board here. I didn't mean to be. So she's the rock. She says, they have corrupted themselves. They are not the spot of my children. Do ye thus requite the Lord, O foolish people? Is this how you repay the Lord, you foolish and senseless people? Isn't she not your father, but your mother and your creator? Because there's no mention of two here. There's one mention of one God here. Didn't she make you and sustain you? Remember the days of old, consider the years long past. Ask your mother, and she will tell you, your elders, and they will teach you. When the Most High gave nations their inheritance and divided the human race, she set the boundaries of the people according to the number of the people of Israel. But the Lord's portion is her people, Israel, her own inheritance. Now they'll stick a man in it. Every time they'll stick Jacob's name. It's really a reference to Israel. She found him in a desolate land, in a barren, howling wilderness. She surrounded him and cared for him and protected him as a pupil of her eye. Now that's both men and women, because in this she found the women that she needed to teach the truth to, who would listen, and the men as well. She watches over her nest like an eagle and hovers over her young. Oh, this is he? They got a he again. He watches over his nest like an eagle, because it's a male that does that, and hovers over his young. He spreads his wing, catches him, and lifts him up on his pinions. Sure, he does. The Lord alone led him, with no help from no strange God. She was alone, she says. I made him ride on the high places of the earth, that he might eat the increase of the fields. And I made him to suck honey out of the rock and oil out of the flinty rock, butter of kine and milk of sheep, with fat of lambs and rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats with the fat of kidneys of wheat, and thou didst drink the pure blood of grape. When Jeshurun waxed fat and kicked, thou art waxen fat, thou art grown thick, thou art covered with fatness. When he forsook God which made him, and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation, they provoked her to jealousy with strange gods. With abominations provoked they her to anger. They sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not. Again, taking us back to Malachi 2, what we read in Malachi 2. He married the daughter of a strange god. They sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not. That's Baal. To new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. Verse 18, of the rock that birthed you, you are unmindful, and has forgotten the God that gave birth to you. Hey, now, remember, in the courts of heaven, you're going to defend your position that the rock that birthed you is male. And God says, what does God say? Let's read it again in Romans 1:20. For the invisible things of her from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even her eternal power and Godhead, so that you are without excuse. Your position that the God that birthed you is male is an indefensible position based on this creation. And you'll look at me and tell me, I don't understand. That's what you do. Really? What did that verse say in Isaiah 29, 28? I can never remember. I'm always one chapter off. 29. It says, surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay. For shall the work say of her that made it, birthed it, she made me not? Or shall the thing framed say of her that framed it, she has no understanding? Well, defend your position that it's a man with a womb that birthed creation. You defend that one in the courts of heaven through logical thinking. Because God says here, for the invisible things of her from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even her eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Now understand, you have to take things in context, because we are living in a fallen world. We're living in a world full of sin. This is not a picture of heaven in the sense that this is perfect living. This is a perfect existence. Obviously it's not. We know that. So you have to put things in their proper context to a degree. Now, what does it say? We were reading Deuteronomy. You ignored the rock who gave you birth. You forgot the God who gave birth to you. That would be mother, who they completely wrote out of the scriptures. But I'm the one that's wrong, and I can't defend my position. But you can, of a he, Godhead, and that the covenant that was broken in the beginning between the man choosing a covenant with the horror spirit as opposed to the righteous spirit represented by Eve, it's an indefensible position that I have. And then to discuss with you how circumcision shows that yet again, and Galatians 4:24 shows it yet again. But my position is an indefensible position of how Mother God was rejected by man, therefore her daughter was rejected by man. My position is an indefensible position, and you're going to be able to stand in the courts of heaven, and you're going to be able to say, he, and you're going to be able to prove it based on what God showed you in this creation. Is that correct? I don't think there's any way you're going to be able to defend that position. I just don't see you defending your position of a male God birthing you. And we discussed this in prior videos. You know, how Baal is that image of the king there in Daniel, the book of Daniel. It's a kingly image. And that stone that's cut out without hands, that would be daughter Zion, represented by the 10 tribes that's been cast out in the fields of the Gentiles. We talked about all of this as well. Okay, so we discussed 110. I had a lot of other things I wanted to say. I had it down yesterday, but I just didn't have the house to myself to be able to make the video. But if I'd have made it, it'd been a lot more clear. Because it's so hard to keep these things together in your mind. What does Proverbs 9:1 say? It says, wisdom hath builded her house. She built the house. Really? What body builds the house? Which is representative of the body, the temple? Well, the woman's womb, doesn't it? Wisdom has builded her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. That's the sevenfold spirit. This branch, from what I'm beginning to understand, is a sevenfold spirit. I ain't going to go into more detail than that. Exodus 17:6, what does it say? It says, I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. This was Moses she was talking to. Strike the rock and water will come out of it for the people to drink. So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. Now that's a symbol of the doctrine, the dew, the water that sustains you. Your doctrine, your truth, is what sustains you. And where does it come from? It comes from the rock, which is definitely a female. Your position is indefensible. You're without excuse. You can't defend your position. when we have the example of the rock saying, I gave birth to you. Genesis 49:22, Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches, that word there is daughters, run over the wall. 23, the archers, that's Baal. 1167, the false image, your husband, who's Lord and Master, have sorely grieved her, not him. It's the branches running over the wall. They're shooting at them. They don't want us discovering the truth. Sorely grieved her and shot at her and hated her. Verse 24, but her bow, her covenant, abode in strength. She didn't violate her covenant. He did. And the arms of her hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Israel. From thence is the shepherdess, which is your spirit, the stone of Israel. That's your feminine. We've got evidence to back this up. You're not going to deny who births you. Isaiah 46, they're trying to birth the burden, the children. And they can't. And that's why it says in Jeremiah 30, it says, why then do I see every man standing around with his hands on his hips as a woman in travail? They're trying to deliver the burden, but they're trying to deliver the burden through lies. That's why it's appointed unto the daughters, because they represent the Spirit, and in this case the Spirit of truth, which is your daughters of Zion, which is going to thresh the nations in the end of days. We're told that in Micah 4. Daughter Zion will thresh, which is your wrath, your Lord. Her wrath is going to fall, who sits to the right hand of Christ. Mother says, to whom will I give my right hand to? She says that in Psalm 84, I believe. Now, I was going to go over, but I'm running out of time. I babbled so long. I wanted to look at that word. So this is a new topic. I wanted to look at that word 4163. And you're going to find it in Micah 5:1. So let's go to Micah 5:1. And I couldn't, back a while ago when I'd been looking at this, I couldn't understand why it kept taking me, the derivatives of this word, or the meaning of this, even the meaning of this word, would suggest a drought house. Where all the waste goes. And I couldn't understand that correlation to this particular word, but I do now. And so I'd like to share it. I'm going to run out of time. I'm sorry, folks. I think I'll do another video, and I'll share this right behind this on another video. So I'm going to cut this one off. Sorry I babbled. I had more references. I wanted to show you the stone, the rock that birthed you, that begat you. And show that your defense of a he, Godhead, and that the next to come on this earth is a king, and Christ is a king, and you have this covenant between a king and a king, a male and a male. You're deficient. Your position is absolutely indefensible. Absolutely. So I'm going to cut it off there, and I'm going to start a new video on this topic. So I hope you actually give it a listen to. Thanks for anybody who posts my videos, who watches them. I appreciate it. And I hope you all have a blessed day.